Alright, we got the Vatican Secrets Iceberg. Let's go. Before we get started, I want to give y'all a rundown of what the Vatican actually is, because it isn't just like some church. The Vatican is a walled city-state in the middle of Rome that serves as the headquarters of the Catholic Church. It's the smallest country in the world, but it's been operating for over 1,000 years, which means it's had plenty of time to bury things. And when you're an institution that powerful, that old, and that secretive, you accumulate a lot of skeletons in the closet. And I want to talk about some of them. Starting out, we have the Vatican Apostolic Archives Restricted Index System. Most people know the Vatican has secret archives, but what they don't know is that the archives aren't just one room. This is a massive underground bunker built beneath the Cordillera della Pina, containing around 85 kilometers, which is approximately 53 miles of shelves packed with historical records dating back millennia. Here's the thing, there's an internal cataloging system that researchers don't have full access to. The Vatican uses what's called a selective catalog, meaning there are documents that exist in the archives but are not listed in the public finding aids. There are 35,000 volumes of catalogs in the archives, but those are the only ones researchers are allowed to see. Scholars have submitted a request for access to specific indices, and if you don't have the key, I guess you can say, to the secondary index, the document is effectively invisible to you, which creates this perfect paradox. If you want to request a document, you need to know it exists and provide specific details about it. But if the document isn't listed in the catalog you can access, you'll never know it's there. Basically, there could be thousands of documents sitting in those 53 miles of shelves that researchers will never find because they're cataloged in a secondary index system that is kept internal and hidden. It's not necessarily nefarious, like large archives like these often have backlogs and restricted materials, but the fact that it's even there fuels endless speculation about what's buried inside these archives that we'll never be allowed to see. And at the end of this iceberg, you will see why people believe this. There's more than what meets the eye here. Next up, we have the Vatican's official exorcism program. The Vatican doesn't just believe in demonic possession, they have an official institutionalized program for dealing with it. The Catholic Church trains and certifies exorcists, maintains records of possession cases, and has an entire division dedicated to investigating claims of demonic activity. The most famous of these was Father Gabriel Amorth, the Vatican's chief exorcist from 1986 until his death in 2016, who claimed to have performed over 70,000 exorcisms during his career. And what's insane is that over multiple interviews, Father Amorth publicly stated that Satan and his demons had infiltrated the Vatican itself. He claimed that he personally witnessed evidence of demonic influence at the highest levels of the church, and that some cardinals and bishops were under demonic attack or influence. He specifically mentioned that he believed satanic rituals had been performed inside the Vatican City, and that there were members of the clergy who were involved in occult practices. The Vatican never officially denied these claims, they just stopped letting Father Amorth give interviews. But here's the thing, the church keeps detailed records of every exorcism, every possession case, every investigation into demonic activity, and those records are sealed in the Vatican archives, unavailable to researchers or to the public. That's in the files that we can't see unless we know about them. Somewhere in those 53 miles of shelving, there are files documenting decades of alleged demonic possessions, exorcisms, and investigations into satanic activity within the church itself. Next up, we have the chronovisor device. In the 1950s, a Benedictine monk named Father Pellegrino Ernetti publicly claimed that he had built a device called the chronovisor, a machine that could allegedly view past historical events by detecting residual electromagnetic radiation from the past. According to Ernetti, the device could show you ancient Rome, allow you to witness the crucifixion of Christ, and observe historical events in real time just by tuning into the right frequency. He even produced a photograph that he claimed was an image of Christ on the cross captured using the chronovisor, but it was quickly debunked. It turned out to be identical to a postcard of a wooden crucifix sculpture from a church in Italy. When confronted, Ernetti admitted the photo was fake, but he never took back his claim that that the machine itself was real. He said he was being forced to stay silent by the Vatican, and that the device had been dismantled and hidden. Now, here's where the conspiracy theorists have a field day. In 1988, the Vatican issued an official decree banning the use of any technical device for recording confessions or spiritual matters, with automatic excommunication as the penalty. On the surface, this makes total sense. The church was protecting the seal of confession from people using hidden microphones or recording equipment. But the timing is what conspiracy theorists find suspicious. This decree came out in 1988, right as Ernetti's claims about the chronovisor were still circulating and gaining attention. The theory goes, if the Vatican was really worried about a device that could see or hear the past, including sacred moments like confessions or even the crucifixion itself, wouldn't it make sense that they would want to ban that preemptively? By writing the decree broadly to cover any technical device used for spiritual matters, they could shut down the chronovisor or anything like it without ever having to acknowledge it existed. Now, to be clear, there's no direct evidence the Vatican was thinking about the chronovisor when they wrote this decree. The official explanation is simple. They were protecting confession privacy. But the fact remains that Ernetti, a Catholic priest, died in 1994 still claiming the machine was real and that the Vatican had forced him into silence. And the church never publicly addressed his claims, never debunked them, never said this is nonsense. They just let it fade into obscurity. So the question isn't, did the Vatican ban the chronovisor? The question is more like, did they ban something broad enough to cover it, just in case? Moving on, we have the third secret of Fatima. In 1917, 3 children in Fatima, Portugal claimed that the Virgin Mary appeared to them and revealed 3 secrets. The first secret was a vision of hell, a terrifying image of souls burning in a lake of fire. The second secret warned of World War II and predicted that Russia would spread errors throughout the world unless it was consecrated to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Both of these were released relatively quickly, but I do want to note there may be slight variations here due to the timeline this information was released. For example, the second secret was released by Sister Lucia in 1941 during World War II, even though it was initially revealed to the children in 1917. So we are kind of just taking their word for it. But the real controversy is the third secret, which was kept locked away in the Vatican for decades. And finally, in 2000, the Vatican released what they said was the full text of the third secret, a symbolic vision describing a bishop in white being killed, which the church interpreted as a reference to the 1981 assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II. Many people, including some cardinals in the church, believe that what was released was not the complete message. There are persistent rumors that a second document exists, one that allegedly warns of apostasy within the church, corruption at the highest level, and a crisis of faith that would tear the Catholic hierarchy apart from the inside. Several high-ranking church officials have made cryptic statements over the years, hinting that the published version may not be the entire truth. For example, Cardinal Luigi Ceppi, the Pope's personal theologian, reportedly stated that the third secret involved apostasy in the church starting at the top. Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigana has publicly claimed that the full text was never released and the church leadership continues to suppress the truth. And Sister Lucia, one of the original visionaries, made several statements before her death suggesting the 2000 release was incomplete, though the Vatican disputes this. This isn't just some fringe conspiracy theorist believing in this. There is theological controversy within the church itself, with mainstream Catholics split into factions over whether the Vatican is hiding the real message. And the Vatican's refusal to fully address these concerns only deepens the suspicion that there's something there that they don't want the world to know. Next up, we have the Vatican Bank and the death of Roberto Calvi. The Vatican Bank, officially called the Institute for the Works of Religion, or IOR for short, has been tied to multiple financial scandals over the decades, including money laundering accusations, the collapse of Banco Ambrosiano, and alleged connections to organized crime. But probably the most infamous case involves a man named Roberto Calvi. also known as God's banker because of his close ties to the Vatican. In 1982, Calvi was found hanging under Blackfriars Bridge in London. His body was dangling from scaffolding, and when authorities examined him, they found that his pockets were stuffed with bricks and stones. Initially, his death was ruled a suicide, but forensic experts pointed out that the positioning of the body and the scaffolding made it nearly impossible for him to have hanged himself. The angle was wrong. There was no evidence he could have climbed to that position alone, and most importantly, his neck showed no signs of injuries you would expect from someone who jumped. The bricks in his pocket weren't just weight, they were placed there after death for some reason, and years later it was officially ruled a murder. And here's where it gets even darker. Calvi was connected to a secretive Masonic lodge called Propaganda Due, or P2 for short, which had infiltrated the highest levels of the Italian government, finance, and even the Vatican itself. Members of P2 refer to themselves as Frati Neri. I think that's how you say that. Members of P2 refer to themselves as Frati Neri, the Black Friars. So when God's banker, a man deeply entangled with Vatican finances, is found hanging under a bridge literally named Black Friars with bricks in his pockets, which many believe was a Masonic symbol of judgment or execution of some sort, it wasn't just a murder. It seemed like it was a message. They made an example out of this man. Millions of dollars disappeared. The Vatican denied institutional responsibility, and to this day, no one has ever been definitively convicted of his murder. This is documented financial scandal mixed with an unsolved murder that points directly at the Vatican and organized crime. So, there you go. And finally, we have the disappearance of Emanuela Orlandi, the Vatican girl. This is a real unsolved case that has haunted the Vatican for over 40 years at this point. In 1983, 15-year-old Emanuela Orlandi, the daughter of a Vatican employee, disappeared after leaving a music lesson in Rome. She was last seen getting into a car near her house, and from then on, she has never been seen again. Over the decades, theories about what happened to her have included a Vatican cover-up, connections to the Roberto Calvi murder and the Vatican bank scandal, blackmail against Pope John Paul II, burial in Vatican-owned property, and even links to organized crime and trafficking. The case has been reopened multiple times, and it seems like every time it gets close to answers, it hits a wall. For example, in 2012, Italian investigators tried to question high-ranking Vatican officials, but the Holy See refused to cooperate, citing sovereign immunity. In 2017, new evidence emerged suggesting Emmanuel might have been kidnapped as leverage in a prisoner exchange, but key witnesses refused to testify or suddenly just went silent. And every time Italian authorities requested access to Vatican records or properties for the investigation, they were blocked. And the Vatican said, we don't have such things. We don't have those records. Then in 2019, the Vatican agreed to open 2 tombs in the Teutonic Cemetery where German-speaking clergy and nobles have been buried for centuries. The decision came after an anonymous tip suggested Emanuela might be buried there, and after decades of pressure, the Vatican finally allowed the family to witness the opening. But when the tombs were opened in front of the Orlandi family, they were empty. However, during the search, investigators found something probably much more disturbing. In the underground chambers beneath the cemetery, there are ossuaries, stone vaults where old bones are stored after graves are cleared to make room for new burials. Inside these ossuaries, investigators found thousands of unidentified bone fragments, some of which appear to be relatively modern, not ancient by any means. The church claimed all the bones were ancient and from previous burials going back centuries, but they have refused to allow independent DNA testing on all of them. The Orlandi family has demanded that every bone fragment be tested to see if any belong to Emanuela, but the Vatican has only agreed to test a small section, and those tests have come back inconclusive, to say the least. And then in late 2024, the Vatican finally cracked. After 40 years of denials, Vatican prosecutor Alessandro Ditti stood up in November 2024 and admitted, "We found the dossier." For 4 decades, the Vatican claimed no such document existed, But this report, the Emanuela Orlandi report, is believed to contain everything the Holy See has collected on the case since 1983. As we sit here in the Big 26, the question is, why was it hidden for 40 years? And what is so damaging in those pages that they're still keeping the contents classified as confidential? Multiple insiders, journalists, and even former Vatican employees have claimed over the years that there was internal knowledge about what happened to Emanuela, knowledge that was never shared with investigators or her family, and to this day, the case remains unsolved. Emanuela Orlandi's family is still fighting for answers, still demanding that the Vatican release everything it knows. And the fact that the Vatican continues to withhold information, continues to block full transparency, suggests that whatever happened to that 15-year-old girl in 1983 is something they cannot or will not allow the world to know.